English teachers of Reddit, what are most debatable multiple choice questions on exam you have seen? A. All of the above. B. None of the above. C. Both A and B. D. Both C and D. I want to stab whoever does this. Oh man, this reminds me of some online quizzes I've had. The teacher apparently didn't know it, but the order of the answers was randomized for each quiz. So you'd have choices like A and B are true, B, A and B are false. C. The sky is blue. D. Grass is green, where C and D had been A and B when the teacher wrote the quiz, but in the quiz I took, were not. It's not really hard, it's B, simple logic question. I had an English teacher give a question with the following format. It was one of those pick the option that's grammatically correct, but I'm going to use math, because I don't remember 2 + 2 = A4 B 2x to C to caret 2D A and B E C and D. That's painful. Took me a second. Right, either the same test or the one after it had another of the same questions, but all of them were grammatically correct, but only one was historically correct. They were all about some obscure war in the 1700s. This question reminds me of a history teacher I had in high school that was pretty weird. He was an old alcoholic curmudgeon that was obsessed with the show 24 and would give extra CR points out to people that made references to it in class tests. His tests were bizarre and often had like 150 multiple choice questions, many of which were repeat questions. I remember though on one exam we had a multiple choice question that had me laughing out loud at how ridiculous it was worded. It was, they got the bomb, like nuked. I would say the appropriateness of this question was debatable with his wording, but dude just did not care. I'm now imagining a phone going off in the middle of his class, but the teacher lets it slide because it has the CTU ringtone. I'm an Aussie teaching English in China. Which of these sentences is correct? Sit down, so the people seated at the back can see. Sit down, so the people sitting at the back can see. Multiple choice. Only one answer is correct. Every question has 4 possible answers. Government exam. I was asked to check the exam. Some questions had more than one correct answer. Some had no correct answers. Some of the questions themselves were grammatically incorrect. There were also spelling and tense errors. After I gave my honest opinion and showed them the errors, they were quite upset with me and never asked me to check again. Did they have justifications for the correct answers? No. They just had a list of the correct answers. Some of them weren't correct. At an exam about ethics, the question was, according to the next situation, which of the next options do you think is the best? If Sona steals Makup, and you are the only person that saw her, what would you do? A, tell her it's bad to steal. B, ignore her. C, take her to the police. D, forgive her and steal with her. Not only the answer is really ambiguous, but the fact that the question says, do you think, makes technically every answer correct and wrong at the same time, because an opinion is neither right nor wrong. I had a math question similar to this. Not the nature of the question in any way, but it asked, can you solve for x? The answer I wrote down was yes, I can. Technically a correct answer. I got half CR for it, which I thought was a little unfair, but since I actually didn't know how to solve for x, I figured I should just take the win on that one. S for the people out there who thought I was serious about thinking I deserved full CR. When I was traveling in Australia, away to stay in the country and get another visa was to do student visas. It comprised of 80% students learning English, legit students, and about 20% like me trying to stay in the country for another year. For the 20% it was basically a shame diploma business. One of the true or false questions was, Q, New Zealand is the greatest country in the world, true or false? The instructor teacher was a Kiwi. That sounds like an instructor giving a freebie question for fun or something. I've seen it happen in plenty of other subjects and it's usually harmless. All the questions were easy though. These courses for backpackers are generally designed to allow people to put in minimum work. The diploma isn't really worth the paper it never gets printed on. It's all about the visa for the students and the money for the college. Loads of countries have these courses for students. It's a fake real diploma. Fake real diploma. Sounds so wrong, but it feels so right. Kiri is using a very sharp knife, but has stepped out of the kitchen. This knife is the only thing left on the surface where Kiri is preparing food. The food being prepared is fish. Knowing that this surface is only ever used to hold this particular knife, is it most likely a Ryusuba shelf? B to Kohiki counter C Yanaji Island D debatable. I choose Yanaji Island as it's clearly named after the Kyoshi warriors and giant koi fish. I had C in question as a student. X plus Y equals Y. How much is X? A Y B 1 C 2 D Y. I mean they're all wrong. I absolutely do not understand anything in these types of questions. So I believe you. Why does this apply to English teachers only, not history, math, or any other class out there? I think mostly language teachers would have something like this, since there can be more than one answer to the question that fit, and only one is correct. Of course it would be great if other teachers will write here too. Below is the example that I recall most vividly on an English exam. I was a music major. Which of the following is correct? A. It's a regularly reoccurring problem. B. The problem continues to reoccur. C. The recurrent problem proved perplexing. D. The reoccurrent problem persists. A and B are probably wrong because saying reoccurring is redundant if you've already said it occurs regularly. If continues to occur, I think recurrent is more grammatically correct than reoccurrent, so C is the answer. I don't mind A, because if something reoccurs, it doesn't necessarily means that it does it regularly. It might just pop up from time to time. B sounds redundant, though. C is just a completely different thought, and D means that it's happening right now, as opposed to it being a thing that happens. Except that C is past tense, while the others are present. Whether we wanted it or not, we've stepped into a war with the Cabal on Mars. So let's get to taking out their command, one by one. Valis Tyrk. From what I can gather, he commands the siege dancers from an Imperial land tank outside of Rubicon. He's well protected, but with the right team, we can punch through those defenses, take this beast out, and break their grip on Freehold. I had two Reddit tabs open. Believe it or not, this was the wrong one. Here in Ontario we have standardized testing that kids take every few years to measure how well our education system is working. On the English portion of one of the tests I remember having to read a short story and the question was, what is the best title for this story? It really bothered me, because what does best mean? Most descriptive? Most creative? There are no hard and fast rules for titles in creative writing. Best is a sort wishy-washy word for most correct. Take this question taken from the Gra. Lawyer is to courtroom as a chef is to kitchen. B. Gladiator is to arena. C. Man is to dog. D. Food is to garbage. So obviously C and D are out. So do I go with A or B? Well, apparently, the answer is B, because a lawyer fights in a courtroom, just as a gladiator fights in an arena. So although both A and B are correct, only one is best. Vertical bar. But apply this to creative writing, and it becomes more complicated. What constitutes the most correct title? In elementary school we were forced to have a Hebrew class, and we learned about the Holocaust, etc. In 5th grade a question on a test was, can you name an effect of the Holocaust on Jewish people? And the two choices were yes and no, and there was no room anywhere on the paper for an explanation, so the teacher took our word for it should be the first one, because sitting at the back doesn't make as much sense as sitting in the back. It wasn't multiple choice, but as a student, I'll always remember flying over the house. Jill saw an airplane. What's wrong with this sentence? Nothing, Karen. Nothing is wrong with that sentence. USAF promotion test questions frequently start with which answer is the most correct. Not an English teacher, but you guys would have a field day with the App World History exam. Nearly every question has at least two answer choices that are correct, sometimes all four. The trick is one is more correct somehow. Yeah, I hate things like that. I had it on my English test and we needed to put words in the blanks. In the text there was this question: does modeling career seem appealing to you? If you should practice catwalk. We had to choose from A, so B yes, and C that was wrong. For me this question was yes no type, so I chose B. All these answers are equally correct. Some are just more equal than others. In 5th grade we read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and on the final book test, there was a short answer question that asked something like, if Charlie didn't win the factory, which of the other children should have been chosen, and why? And I said Mike TV, because living in the factory would be like living in a TV show, and I think he would be happy there. I got points off because my opinion wasn't supported by the book. Also, I just realized the post said multiple choice question. Oh well. I like that answer and think it was well reasoned. I give you points for it. Howdy question. In my country, when teachers teach English, they sometimes include phrases such as ain't or howdy as live English used in daily conversation. However, when I was a middle school student, one student wrote howdy as an answer to a question on correct expression. Some teachers considered it as a slang, and they claimed it as a wrong answer. However, another teacher taught that in class. Heh, I've kind of had a similar situation. I teach English language learner students, and some of my Chinese students told me that they were encouraged to use nowadays in their English classes, as it'll sound natural, as it's a sort of casual slang expression. Too bad that Americans don't actually talk like that. P. Nowadays and every notes where my students go to for starting speeches and essays. It drove me nuts, because they just used it as a canned expression that lacked meaning. On our state tests, there seems to be at least one question every year that states what would be an appropriate title for the passage above. I mean, I see what answer they want, and I can see why titling something entirely random might be silly, but at the same time, I can argue that the title is up to the author. Placing titles on a piece of writing can be a work of art itself. I'm pretty sure J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye novel had a debatable title for its time. On top of this, why should we even focus on such a skill?